To the Eye of Jupiter Live. I am your host, Tom Franklin, and today we have on paranormal researcher, investigator, owner of the Night House, and he is here to promote his new book. We have on Mr. Eric Freeman Sims. So I'm very happy that he decided to join us today. If you keep finding yourself coming back to the channel, please do me a favor, like and subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, hit the bell notification, all the things you got to do to make sure you keep up with all the content over here. You can also consider becoming a member and getting some of the content early, as well as a personalized screensaver that I make for you myself. You can also follow me on Rumble. You can also get some merchandise. I'm going to grab that for you real quick. Boom. You got your t-shirts, you got your hats, you got your mugs, you got your posters. Go ahead, down at the bottom, link below, and go ahead and pick one of those things up. You can also download me on your favorite podcast app, an MP3 format. That way you can listen to my sultry voice while you're delivering your Coke and Pepsi products. So with all that out of the way, let's welcome to the show Mr. Eric Freeman Sims.
Hey, Tom, how's it going?
A little tired, a little hot, a little bothered. I'm doing okay, but how about yourself, man?
I'm good. Busy, but good. Good busy.
It's a good, yes.
Yeah.
Indeed, man. Indeed. How's the weather up there?
It's not been bad. We have our second false spring. Tomorrow it's going to be a little colder. Today it was 70 and sunny, so it was nice. Tomorrow back down in the 50s, which is kind of our average this time of year in Tennessee. But no, yeah. not too bad. It'll be warm and stay warm here soon. So.
Yeah, dude, do me a favor. Tell everyone a little bit about yourself and what you're promoting, where they can find you, things of that nature, buddy.
Yeah, I've been an investigator for over 20 years now, and last year bought my own haunted location, the Night House in Hopkinsville, Kentucky, and we have it up for history tours and rented out for paranormal investigations as well. And been a researcher too, diving into all the things, especially being a podcast host and having all different guests and stuff for the past 5 years, coming on 5 years. My podcast has been going on, the Unseen Paranormal, and over 160 guests, and fixing to bring it back at the end of March. And I decided to write a book. In Tennessee, especially with the Appalachian Mountains, we have it's kind of a rich tradition of storytelling coming from the Appalachian Mountains and from the Cherokee people and the Native Americans. Kind of handed their history down until the Cherokee came up with a written language. But so I wanted to write a book kind of in that same vein, but also in the realm of ghost stories and things that, from my native Tennessee, and learn a lot more about the history and stuff. So writing the book, Small Town Haunts and Legends of Tennessee, I wanted to talk about the lesser known haunted locations and the history of those locations too, because I think it's important to understand the history, to understand why a place is haunted to begin with. And also, a lot of we in Tennessee, we take a Tennessee history class in high school. That's required as one of your
Oh,
history
wow.
credits. And but a lot of the history that I uncovered is stuff they don't teach you. That I think is a lot more interesting than what they actually teach. So
Yeah.
the book's probably 70% history, and probably the other 30% the ghost stories and the haunting stuff. But I kind of wrote the book kind of like an old coffee table book, like the old Reader Digest books, where you can sit down for 5 minutes and read it, or you can sit down for an hour. Some of the stories are short, some of them are longer, some of the history is short, some is longer, and just a whole range of things. And so, like the way I laid it out, the first section of the book, about 50, 60 pages, is all the legends, like Bigfoot and some of the Cherokee legends and things like that. Wampus cat, Catzilla, which is a giant catfish. Some of
Wow.
the dams, yeah. And then I went. Tennessee is divided into West, Middle, and East Tennessee, and they're actual geographical divisions. With the Tennessee River dividing Middle Tennessee and West Tennessee, and then you have the Cumberland Plateau and the Cumberland Divide on the other side that divides Middle Tennessee from East Tennessee. And so I laid the book out that way as well. So you start in West Tennessee,
Okay.
Middle, East, but you can jump around to different cities, and I do a little blurb about the city history and the people, and then go into the individual locations in that city that I wrote about with the history and the hauntings there. So
That's fantastic. And when did you release this?
it came out the 1st of February, so hasn't even been out a month yet. February
Oh,
7th
this has
was when
been
it
a month.
released. So
Yeah. Well, yeah.
yeah,
Very
so it's
cool.
still fresh.
Tell me a little bit about this giant catfish. Tell me if you be so kind and tell me a little bit about this. This is interesting.
Yeah, so there's actually been even divers. We have a lot of hydroelectric dams in Tennessee because of the Tennessee Valley Authority, and they provide electricity to pretty much the entire southeast through a lot of these hydroelectric dams. So they've dammed up a lot of the rivers in Tennessee to make these huge reservoirs, and then the water creates electricity. Well, below these dams, and even behind the dams, you've had fishermen and hey Pam, and fishermen and even divers who go down to work on the dams and the equipment. I report catfish that are the size of Volkswagen Beetles, that are man eaters, because
Yes,
catfish
I've
will eat
heard of this
in
before.
their
I've
mouth.
heard of that. Well,
Yeah, yeah.
that I
Anything
didn't
that
know.
catfish can suck in its mouth, it'll eat. Yeah. And so,
Cool.
for all intents and purposes, catfish just can keep growing if their environment's big enough and there's enough food. So, um, but also fishermen are known to maybe throw a little spin on their catch too. Add a few extra pounds or something, to what they actually caught. So, but like I said, divers have
Yeah,
reported it too. So,
I don't know. Is Tennessee also known for noodling, where people stick their
yeah,
hands and feet in deep holes and pull out these? Yeah, they're known for that too.
yeah, we got a lot of people that noodle arough here. Some of the
Oh,
smaller rivers. Yeah,
imagine reaching down and then pull them. I don't think you can pull it. They'll pull you out. It'll pull you through the box or whatever.
yeah,
That's wild. But that's kind of like stated everywhere that these large catfish. Tell me, let's go a little bit area by area. Let's start east. What is like the one that like we're just trying to promote your book.
yeah,
Don't give
yeah,
away too much. You want people to actually buy it. Uh,
yeah.
yeah, like the story that was intriguing to you there. What was something that you found out that intrigued you?
One of the stories that I put in the book, and this is actually in the legends part of the book from East Tennessee. Back in the 1960s, a little boy named Dennis Martin disappeared in the Smoky Mountain National Park, and he was playing hide and seek with his brother and some other kids that were camping at the same campsite. And Dennis had a red shirt on and shorts and shoes, and he was the most highly visible out of the kids. The other kids kind of had brown colors on, things, and they were older. But Dennis, they turned around and he was just gone like that. And they did a massive, massive search for this little boy. They only ever found one footprint, and it matched the size shoe and the type of shoe that he was wearing. There was a family further down the mountain at a campsite, and they were looking up on the mountain, looking for bears, black bears, and they're all over the Smoky Mountains. And they can be dangerous to people, but they're not nearly as dangerous as grizzly bears and things like that, because black bears tend to be a lot smaller, and they kind of stay out of your way if you leave them alone. But they were looking, the little kids were looking for black bears. Well, they saw a what looked like a really tall, hairy man with something thrown over his shoulder, something red thrown over its shoulder, going up the mountain. And they reported it when
Wow.
they found out the little boy went missing and he was wearing a red shirt. They reported it to the FBI. And the weird thing is, the FBI doesn't do missing person cases. The FBI does kidnap cases that go across the state lines. They do federal stuff. So the fact that the FBI even came out to investigate this disappearance is weird. They also brought out the
Yeah.
National Guard. They brought out the National Guard, and it sort of fits the missing 411 stuff like David Pilates does. A lot of the things kind of fit there because once they started, one of the things with the missing 411 stuff is the weather always turns bad really quickly. And yeah, that can happen in the mountains, but usually you can see it coming in the mountains because the mountains affect the weather. And but the weather turned bad really quickly when they started searching. But they ended up bringing in the National Guard and even Green Beret soldiers for training. They said, but it's odd that they brought the Green Beret in too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but they never found Dennis Martin. To this day, it's still a mystery of what happened to him. They've never found bones. They never found anything. No sign of no clothes, no nothing. A lot of the missing 411 stuff, they'll at least eventually find bones or clothing or something further up the mountain or something like that. But they've never found any trace of Dennis Martin.
How long has this been?
That was I believe it was 1969.
1969. So wow,
Yeah.
that's like 56 years ago. So I don't think they're gonna. Yeah, that's kind of Davy Jones. It's always a very interesting thing. I had Harley Owens on here, and he was talking about like as soon as he started doing what he's doing out there in Eastern Tennessee, like these black trucks pulled up and getting phone calls. It's just such a. David Solowski a long time ago, Jason Solowski was talking about where he was on a campground, and once the Sasquatch activity started picking up in Canada there, then like all of a sudden these black helicopters showed up. It's a weird I wouldn't even say it's occurrence, but there's something going on that we're not quite aware of.
Yeah, there's one case that comes to mind. It's not Tennessee, but up in Canada, there's a story about a gentleman. And I believe it's on David Pilates, one of his documentaries, but it caught my attention. He went camping at this campsite by this lake that he'd always gone camping to. He took his dogs with him, and he had like a camper on the back of his truck bed that he slept in with his dogs, and he was always armed while he was out there because of bears and things. And he told his wife that he was just going to go camping for the weekend. He'd be back, and she knew exactly where he was going because she had been out there with him camping. And he just disappeared. And they found his dogs locked inside the camper, and they were fine, nothing wrong with them. But the search and rescue people came out. Well, they got kicked off the search because they sent out RCMP special forces with ARs and full flak jackets, full helmets, ARs to go through the woods look for this guy. And they kicked the search and rescue people off the site. And they ended up finding some of his clothes and his sidearm. I think he had a .45 pistol further up the mountain because he was kind of in a valley where this lake was. And they found his shirt hanging on a branch in the water. And so, but yeah, when this special forces come in with all this ammo and weapons, they ran everybody off and wouldn't let them go in the woods searching. And they only searched for like 3 or 4 hours. And they, when they found the shirt, it gave them the excuse that, he drowned. Even though we haven't found his body, he drowned, and everybody just needs to leave. And so to this day, they've never, it's just weird they send in like these guys that are heavily armed, looking for this guy in that area without any explanation. And his body's never washed up. So if he would have drowned, his body would eventually surface.
Yes.
It's only found it because this is a park, recreation area. People boat and things like that and camp. And yeah, other than some of his clothes and like I said, his pistol further up the mountain. And for some reason, his dogs were locked in the, something scared him enough, I guess, that he locked his dogs in the camper because he was concerned about them. So
that's possible. If it's locked, yes. If they're locked in there, he must have seen something. Something. What got you? What is you bought this? You bought this interesting. We'll go back to the stories in a second. But what got you? What made you buy an old haunted mansion? I'm sure I asked you this before, but refresh me.
I love the history. Because 80% of what we do with the paranormal is history. Learning why a place is haunted, it's important, I believe. And so I'm a big history buff. And so when I go on vacation, I like to go to museums and things like that and learn history about the place. And And so it just came up as an idea that maybe one day own my own historic location. Um, and if it's haunted, that would just be kind of a, extra thing to open up for paranormal. So I just randomly started looking on Facebook at this group popped up on my Facebook called Old Houses $100,000 and Beyond. And their whole point, they have a website and everything. They have hundreds of thousands of members of their group on Facebook, and their whole point is to save these old houses from being torn down.
Oh,
And
that's
so
cool.
they
Shout out
advertise the
to
real
them.
estate listings, and a lot of these old houses are going for really, really cheap. And they have one that's $100,000 and under too. For some of these old houses, they have two separate websites. But so I pitched the idea to my husband, who's the money man. He's the one who takes care of all the finances. Yeah. And I was like, look, these houses are going for cheap. And he's a big history buff too. He didn't care anything about the paranormal, but we're both into history. And going around, I was kind of familiar because throughout the years I've investigated lots of places that were history museums that were open, for history tours and things like that. So anyway, we looked at a few different houses, and we came across this house in Hopkinsville, and we kind of had a criteria of, for one, I told him, I said, it has to have a name. If the house is already named, then there's a significant history there because there was a reason to name it after a family. And I said, so it needs to have a name, and that will get my interest right off the bat. And then also it needs to be within 2 hours where we live, because we're not moving from our house where we live outside of Nashville. So it needs to be within 2 hours driving distance where it's not too bad to go back and forth. Or we can go there and spend the night and then drive back home. And we found the Night House in Hopkinsville, and for 200 years, it's been a residence, never been open to the public. And reading the comments on the real estate listings on Facebook and stuff was interesting, because a lot of people were like, I hope somebody saves this house, because it's on 3 acres in the middle of town. So a contractor could come in and tear it down and build 4 or 5 houses on 3 acres,
Yeah, absolutely.
and make more money than they would off this historical house. So we went and looked at the house, and then we finally came to an agreement with the previous owners that we bought it from, and we got it for a steal, got it for a really good price, and
Cool.
Yeah, the rest is history. So it's coming up in April, will be a year that we've owned it. So,
and this location is open for paranormal investigators to rent out and come in and do some investigations.
Yeah, we got three different price points that we do. We have a 7 to midnight investigation for $150. We have a 7 p.m. to 3 a.m. investigation for $250, and then for $400 we have a full night from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. And they can the full night you can actually sleep in the beds and all that, and investigate all night if you want.
And there's I'm sorry, there's a website for this where people can go, and if they're interested to okay, maybe I'll grab that real quick and pull it up. So did you have to do any I'm sure you had to do some type of renovations on this place, didn't you?
Yeah, the house is over 200 years old, so it's one of those things. The upkeep is always there. There's a lot more upkeep. Plus, it's over 5,000 square feet, so it's massive. So there's always something to do. The previous owners owned it for 10 years, and they did a lot, especially with the foundation and things like that. We're coming in and doing a lot more. We're finishing where they started. So there wasn't a finished kitchen. They built a wing onto the house for a modern kitchen and a modern laundry room. And so we've finished the kitchen and working on scraping and painting the outside columns and stuff, and refreshing all that. Nobody's really ever, in probably 20 years, the house hasn't really had landscaping. So we put in landscape lights to highlight the house at night with the big columns. It looks amazing with the uplights on the columns. And we've started putting in landscaping. We're going to put the original formal garden back in. It used to have a huge half-acre formal garden, with a big 6-foot tall hedgerow around it. And so we're working on putting that back in starting this summer, and just kind of trying to restore the house the best we can. Because it's been a residence for 200 years, it's been changed by the different families that live there to suit their needs at the time. And the biggest change was when the Knight family moved in 1860. They switched the house from federal style to Greek Revival. So when you look at the house now, the front porch is a small porch with the columns, and then the side portico is the big giant 2-story columns. All of that was added in the 1860s by the Knight family. And a lot of things were done in the house too to change it over to Greek Revival. The mantles were changed. It has 2-foot tall baseboard in the parlor, and the walls are 2-foot thick brick. It's just 10-foot ceilings. Which is
Well,
impressive.
what is it about the house that is so? Is there anything about the house that's odd or off or just off-putting, or like when you go in, is there something where you're just like, is it a feeling? Is there like, I don't know, maybe a stairwell that leads to nowhere or something like that? Something crazy.
The house is very weird because it's 6 levels, but the levels don't take up a whole level. It starts out with a cellar on this half, and then when you come up to the basement, it's a half basement, but it runs the whole length of the house. And then you come up another set of stairs to the ground floor, and there's 2 bedrooms and a bathroom, and then that's where the dining room is, and then the new modern kitchen. And so that's the biggest level, but it's only half of the actual house because the extension comes off the back of it. Then you go up another set of stairs to the parlor. Well, the parlor runs the whole length of the house, but it's only half the house. And then there's these really weird steps that they're pie shaped and they turn as you go up them. And so they're very, very weird. And we've actually had to put 2 handles for people to hold on to because you have to kind of twist your feet as you go up. And that's the guest level. And then you go up another level, and that's the very top level is the attic. And the attic has 8-foot ceilings, and it's half the house, but runs the full length of the house. So it's a pretty huge attic. But it's very weird how it's laid out. And but the feeling that everybody says when they go in there is not even a feeling of being watched or anything, but a very welcoming feeling. That's how we felt from day one. Everybody comes in there, and I can tell you even from watching, not even when investigators come in, especially the ones that are going to spend the night, just watching them and their demeanor, how within the first 20 minutes they're kicking their shoes off and walking around in their socks. They'll go put their pajamas on, like as soon, even before they start investigating, because you feel so comfortable in the house to make yourself at home. And so
that's cool. So it's kind of like I'm at a couple questions. I got a ton of them actually. Well, first of all, let's go through this. We have a question from Joshua Marshall. It's about your book. Is there anything in your book about Pickwick, Tennessee? I don't know where that is. Maybe you do.
Not specifically Pickwick. No. It's a lot of it came down to the research and having enough meat on the bone to actually write a story. A cohesive story. There are lots of like rumblings of different, hauntings and things like that. But if it was just one house in that area that, my cousin and his brother had an experience there one time, I kind of stayed away from that because I wanted it where the ghost stories were kind of handed down, and there was also a significant history with the house. It's not just some random abandoned house that's become the haunted house in town, And not saying there's not some stuff in Pickwick. It's just I didn't come across anything that was significant enough to put in the book that I thought at the time. There will probably be a part 2 for the Tennessee book at some point in time. But right now the next book I'll be working on is Kentucky. So.
And you picked Tennessee because you're a native resident of Tennessee. Yeah. So it was kind of has like an interest of you to do so.
Yeah.
And sorry, I was distracted. I heard the door squeaking. My lady walked in. I was like, what's that? We're talking about hauntings and the door squeaks behind me. And then Kentucky, that's why Kentucky next?
Because Kentucky has lots of weirdness and high strangeness. There are lots of weird things that people haven't ever heard about Kentucky unless you're from there, or like now we're kind of second residents there. And so hearing the stories and the rumblings around there. And I've always been fascinated since I saw the film Hellier, which is in eastern Kentucky. I've been kind of fascinated with it. But there's also another goblin story. If you've seen Hellier's about these goblins in the town of Hellier coming out of the mines. Well, you also in Hopkinsville, you have the Hopkinsville goblins. And so they were these little creatures that were gunmetal gray. I don't know. People call them the little green men, but they weren't. They were gunmetal gray, and they attacked this family on their own farm in 1955. And also not far from Hopkinsville, you have Land Between the Lakes. Yeah. Oh, there's a whole story there. That's
how far is Land Between the Lakes from Hopkinsville?
About 20 minutes. Yeah,
oh wow, that's
about 20 minutes
from the northern border.
Yeah. So Land Between the Lakes spans Tennessee and Kentucky. So you got the majority of Land Between the Lakes is in Kentucky. About a quarter of it's in Tennessee.
And that's that. And you've been there before?
Oh yeah, I've been there many times. I've never camped there because I don't camp. but I'm just not a camping person, and not because of anything paranormal, not because of
No,
anything
just because you
paranormal.
don't camp. I got it, dude. I figured that out
But
quick.
we have bears and mountain lions and shit like that that'll eat you. So like I'm not relying on that little fabric tent to save me.
Yeah,
Yeah, just not a camper.
so I love it. I love camping. So this house that you have, the night house, and I'm sure there's a lot of upkeep. There's a staff, and there's
Yeah,
a lot of things to there's electric bills. You got your excuse me, your property taxes and all those kind of things. And so basically, the tours are just kind of to cover those bases. You're not in it to
yeah.
make profit. You're in it to
Oh
spread the
no.
history.
Yeah, no, it's all about the history. We're not in it at all. Actually, I just lowered the prices for the paranormal investigations because I'm trying to find that sweet spot of not charging too much, but people being happy with what they get for what they pay too. So, but that was also the thing going into buying the house was I wanted it to be affordable to everybody. So, like the overnights are $400. Well, you can have up to 10 team members for $400. So that's $40 a person. And what we've been getting too is a lot of teams that are teaming up with other teams to make it cheaper and things like that. But there are other locations that are $1,000. That are like our
Wow.
house. And we don't have a staff of people yet. Hopefully, we're gonna have some volunteers. Right now, it's an army of one. I do most of the stuff in the night house. I give all the tours, and I'm there in the house whenever because I have an office and a room that I stay in whenever we have people in the house. So if they need anything, I'm there. But yeah, I'm pretty much running the show up there.
So I'm sure you're going to put the night house in your next book too. I mean, it happens to be in Kentucky. I think
Yeah,
that, double stack it, dude.
yeah, yeah. Well, Sin, our mutual friend Sin, is trying to push me
Yes.
to write a book just about the night house because of all the history I've uncovered and all the history that I'm continuing to find as I dive into it. So,
Well, since we're on the topic of mutual friends, I'm hoping he's a friend. What do you know about Mark Elliott Fultz?
Mark is awesome. He is a trip. He has
Funny.
he has an
Yes.
infectious energy about him that just makes you want to smile every time you talk to him. And I've had the pleasure of talking to him on the phone quite a few times. We actually did a night house walkthrough when we first bought it with him on FaceTime, and which was pretty awesome. But man, he's the real deal. I'm not big on psychics and mediums, but I know two of them that I know, and he's one of them that I believe are the real deal, just because of things I've seen from them. But Mark is awesome. Mark's great. He's a
Yeah.
great guy.
He just wrote a new book too. I think it's also
Yeah.
grandma's old cookbook or something.
My mean old grandma's something cookbook. So he's
Something
fixing
like 800 pages or something. It took Sin quite a while
Yeah.
to edit that whole thing. She was working around the clock.
Yeah, it's
getting that book out for him.
1,700 recipes, and they
Yeah.
date all the way back to like the year 1000, all the way like from crazy.
Mark's an interesting cat. So, what is it? Is there a specific thing about the night house that for a paranormal investigator, say somebody that goes there, is there something that's because of course not every investigation is going to be fruitful for lack of a better word. Well, what is the thing that happens like the most that people are enjoying when they're going there doing their investigations?
So I think so far, the spirits there have showed out for most of the teams we've had. It's kind of been from what I've seen and what I've discussed with like Sin and other people who've been in the house. We think there's kind of a learning curve with the spirits because we're the first people to ever come in and investigate. Before then, like I said, it's always been a residence. I've heard stories from previous owners and through the grapevine of previous owners having experiences with the spirits in the house, but nobody's ever gone and tried to communicate with them like us investigators do. So what I've seen is it's kind of evolving, and they're getting better and better at communicating. To the point that last Friday night we had a team in for 7 to midnight, and they got some pretty good stuff come through, and they were just there from 7 to midnight, and they got the name John and the name Ida, which John is JB Knight, the guy who bought the house. The head of the Knight family, his name was John Bailey Knight, and they didn't hear me call him John. I call him JB because that's what he went by, and business wise and personal. And so they come and said, "Is there any connection to John here?" And I said, "Well, that was JB Knight. His name was John." And then also, I never said anything because I just gave him a brief history tour, and I didn't kind of go into the Knight kids. They had 7 kids, and one of their kids was Ida, and she lived there. She was born there and lived
Wow.
there her whole life, and they got the name Ida.
Right.
And,
That's incredible.
Yeah. So they're starting to figure out how to use the way that we try to communicate with them with, recorders and things. They're starting to figure it out. So it's kind of ramped up. And the biggest question I get is, well, why is that haunted? Well, the night, and the reason it's called the Night House is because that particular family lived there for 85 years. And so for almost half of the house's history, they lived there from 1816 until their family sold the house in 1945, 1860 until their family sold the house in 1945. Well, 5 of their kids were born in that house, and 5 of them had their wakes there, plus the parents. So only 2 of their kids died elsewhere.
Wow.
So their son Charlie and son Ida, neither one of them were ever married, never had kids. They were born in that house and they died in the house. Charlie died in 1924 in his 70s, and Ida died in 1938 in her 80s. And so, their daughter Carrie died in the house of tuberculosis when she was 25. Their youngest daughter Katie died at the age of 17 or 18 of tuberculosis as well in the house. So, and JB Knight, he died of congestive heart failure in the house in the 1880s. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Well, let's kind of steer it back to the book for a second.
Yeah.
So where can people find this? Is on do you have a website, or is it just an Amazon link? How's that going on?
Right now it's just on Amazon. I will have a website here soon. I've been working on it, just getting it up and going. And Amazon, it is available on Amazon. Right now it's free on Kindle Unlimited for anybody that has Kindle Unlimited. I got it up for free, at least for the first 3 months. It's also, if they want to buy it, they can buy the Kindle version, and then it's on paperback and hardcover too on Amazon. Awesome. Once I get the website up and running, if people want signed copies, they can buy them straight from me from the website, and I will sign them and ship them to them.
There you go.
Trying to get that going. Yeah. Because Amazon also takes like 40% royalties. So if once I get the website going to people order them from me, like I said, I can sign them for them and personalize them. And also, I get all the money as the author other than the cost to print the book. So yeah, mean old grandma's good old cookbook and more. Yeah. And he put the thing about it is it's not just recipes. He's got stories in there of his mean old grandma and how mean she was and things like that. So she was
he does that he does that double voice thing that always makes me laugh. She was a bitch. I was like, this guy is a trip, man.
What I'm waiting on is he's going to do a cooking show on YouTube with the recipes.
I heard about that.
But he's going to be using puppets and costumes. It's going to be a big production, so it's going to be awesome. I can't wait for it. Yeah.
That's going to be informative as well as hilarious.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it, dude. I love when people can just follow their passions,
Yeah.
Whatever that is, dude. I enjoy that so much. Or you want to dress up and you want to get some puppets and do a cooking show? I tell you what, dude. I don't know him that well, of course. But it seems to fit his personality, and I'm looking forward to that. When that comes out, I'm going to promote the crap out of that.
I am too. It's going to be awesome. Yeah, it's going to be great. Yeah.
So let's go now to, let's say, Central Kentucky. Not Kentucky, pardon me. Tennessee.
Middle Tennessee.
Middle Tennessee, excuse me. Middle Tennessee. What intriguing story in that area of the bush or of the brush of the state just pops into your head that you would like to tell us?
There's lots of Middle Tennessee. The interesting thing with Tennessee is because East Tennessee was settled late 1700s, and so was Middle Tennessee. West Tennessee was not settled until later in the 1800s, 1820s, 1830s, when you had major settlements out there, and Memphis was settled and founded. So it was a little harder to find West Tennessee stuff. So whereas, for one, I'm from Middle Tennessee, I've investigated so many locations in Middle Tennessee, so it was a lot easier for me to write about. And then East Tennessee also. We got on vacation to Gatlinburg and out that way. My whole life I've gone out to the Appalachian Mountains and to Knoxville and Chattanooga, and so. But there's lots of stories. But Middle Tennessee, man, is full of so much stuff. My favorite place to write about, and probably my favorite place, is it's 20 minutes down the street from me, is Franklin, Tennessee. You had the big Battle of Franklin, the Civil War, that they called the 5 bloodiest hours of the Civil War. and so many men died during that battle. One of the most interesting stories is about the Lotz house, which is downtown Franklin. And Johann Lotz, who built the Lotz house, was a master carpenter from Germany. And he studied for like 15, 20 years to become a master carpenter. And so his house was not made of brick. His house was wood siding, and everything was wood because he wanted to showcase what he could do with his own house, because it's in the middle of downtown Franklin. And across the street was the Carter House, which is also open. The Lotz house and the Carter House are both open for history tours. And the Lotz house does paranormal investigations too. They rent out for paranormal investigations. But during the battle, the Lotz family went across the street to the Carter House, because the Carter House was brick and it had a basement. So they, during the battle, which was fought right out on their front lawns, they didn't sleep or anything, because it was nothing but gunfire and cannon fire, men screaming and things like that, all night, the whole time of the battle. So they hid in the basement of the Carter House, so no stray bullets would strike the family or anything like that. So they all survived. But one of the interesting parts of the history is that the Johann Lotz's wife wrote that when the next morning, when all the battle was over, they decided to go back to their house across the street, and it's probably a football field away, and their feet never touched the ground from the Carter House to their house, because they walked on nothing but dead bodies. That's how many men died during that battle. And their house had cannon balls that come through the roof and blew out holes in the floor. There's still cannon burn marks in what's now the gift shop. You still see them in the floor where they landed, and they were so hot they burned in the wood. That house, there's a lot of activity in the Lotz house too. I've had several things happen. The first time I went there for a day tour, I actually went with my buddy Lee, who's also an investigator, and we were checking it out, so rented out for an investigation. And I got my pant leg tugged. Well, there's two spirits of two little kids that are said to be in the house, two little girls that were sisters, and I got my pant leg tugged. And then me and Lee both saw somebody walk behind us, and there was only just the two of us and the director, Thomas, who was giving the tour in the house at the time. And this is middle of the day, and we both looked behind us at the same time, because we both saw somebody walk behind us in the corner of our eye. And then when I investigated there, man, it was so active. Especially that was the first experience I ever had with a portal, with where they take the old radios and they turn them into they use a spirit box, and you can talk to the spirits through them. I'd never had any experience with one of those, and the guys investigating with had one, and I actually had an argument with the spirit, because I walked into the room where it was at, and I said, "My name's Eric. What's your name?" And clear as day, it said Eric. And I said, "No, that's my name. What's your name?" It said Eric again. And I said, "Okay, I guess your name's Eric." And then it said Eric a third time. So I was like, "All right,
okay, we got it."
But also that same night, we were asking who the president is, and clear as day came out of the box was Lincoln, several times. Yeah. And then heard like loud bangs on the wall, and we thought it was somebody messing with us, like outside beating on the wall, because like I said, the house is wood siding. So, but no, nobody was outside, and you're in the middle of town, and that part of downtown, I mean, they roll the sidewalks up after 5 o'clock. It's that type of small downtown Franklin is, because the other side of Franklin's kind of modern, and where the mall is, and all that stuff. So that part of town, kind of all the traffic dies down and stuff.
Eric, did you say portal?
Yeah, they call it a portal, a geoport or a portal box.
Okay.
Yeah. They use like the old radios, and they put the spirit box in there. It's basically a spirit box with a speaker and 2 guitar pedals, and one guitar pedal is a reverb pedal, so it drags out the voice so you can hear the answers better. And the other guitar pedal is a noise canceling gate pedal that cancels out.
Yeah. Like the white boss pedal or something.
Yeah, so you don't hear the static. So because normally with a spirit box, it's going through the stations and you hear the static.
Oh, that's cool.
Well, you adjust the pedal so you don't hear the static. You just hear the voices that come through.
Oh, that's awesome. So it's like a noise gate kind of, but it's more of the noise suppressor. It's actually, you're probably talking about the Boss noise suppressor. I used to have one on my rig. They're actually pretty impressive. They let through what needs to come through, and they really are able to cut out what you don't want. I didn't even know that existed, because that's the thing about the spirit box that always bugs me, is like, hush.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So that's really cool, dude. Yeah. So being a history buff, that means you go around the places, and your whole life is just something you're interested in. Me, I'm
Yeah.
a geography guy. I love knowing all the capitals and rivers, and it's just what I like. So I'd imagine like you got like your start being an investigator by investigating history. You
Yeah.
go from
Yeah.
here to there, and then you start learning about, oh, this is some paranormal stuff here too, and then it got you into it as well. Or did you experience something when you were younger, before all this?
My first experience is when I was 8. I saw a full body apparition. I woke up in the middle of the night, sat straight up in bed, and my door was open, and there was a glowing lady in the door, glowing like a white, yellowish light, and it scared me. So I jumped up, flipped the light on, slammed the door, and that's the first experience I can remember. I've pretty much been haunted my whole life. What really kicked me into investigating in the '90s, in 1997, my father passed away when I was 14, and I was raised agnostic because he was agnostic. And so well, they basically let me formulate my own opinion, and I went with agnosticism. Um, and so I wanted to figure out, well, where did my dad just cease to exist? Did he go somewhere like it? Because agnosticism, we believe in something beyond us and a place beyond us, just not labels, right? We're not going to subscribe to one religion or another. And so I wanted to prove to myself, because I'm kind of scientific minded person, fact based person. So I wanted to prove to myself that there was something beyond us. So I convinced some of my friends, and I had a couple of older friends that drove. I convinced them to go to this place in Franklin, again called Carton Plantation, which is in the book also, um, which they used as a hospital during the Civil War. There's still these ginormous bloodstains in the floor where they did so many amputations in the house. And we would sneak out there at night, and it was kind of what you did in high school anyway, if you lived around here. But most of the people snuck out there to get scared or to scare their friends. They
Yeah,
weren't seriously
yeah.
looking for anything. But me and my friends were seriously looking to have a paranormal experience, and we had quite a few out there, and kept going back. And we would sneak onto the property. We were trespassing, but we never vandalized anything, never bought anything. We never even went up to the house because they had motion sensors and stuff. But we experienced stuff on the property. I saw a lady one time pull the curtains back and poke her head in the window. Well, it's been a museum my entire life. I mean, they turned it into a museum in the '80s, so nobody's lived there since then. So, and
Holy
we
crap.
you can hear cannon fire out there at night. It's notoriously haunted in this area. But yeah, so that's how I got my start, and that was before the TV shows and all that. Before Ghost Hunters came out, and I didn't even know at the time. I didn't even realize people got together, like adults got together and did this as a hobby. I didn't know
Yeah.
there was such things like Nashville Paranormal was a team. And then once the TV shows came out, actually on my 18th birthday, a good friend of mine bought me a book that was like Ghost Hunters Beginner's Guide or something. And that's kind of when I learned that there was actually teams around the country that did this as a hobby, and actually people that these teams went in and helped people in their own houses, private residence and things. And so, you grow up hearing about haunted houses, like your friends may live in a haunted house or something, their house, weird things happen in their house. But I just didn't know that people, went to help these people. And then once I graduated in 2001, you kind of, a couple of years later, you had like Ghost Hunters come on and things like that. So it became a little more mainstream and
Oh, you're about
normal, I guess.
3 years younger than me. That's about 3 years. Yeah, let's figure that out. You're 3 years younger than me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just like, you talking about that actually sparked a memory of my own. I'm not going to try to talk over you, people, but
No,
I
you're fine.
remember when, yeah, it's just I was in the military, and for fun on the weekends we were in Kansas, which there's a lot to do in Kansas, and so we. Fort Riley is a very haunted base. If you know anything about Fort Riley, Kansas, it's where the 1918, 1917, where the first where the Spanish lady actually came from. It's from Fort Riley, Kansas. So there's a lot of history there. And we
Yeah.
used to go to these cemeteries and scare our friends, put candles on stone, and we used to wear these big black things. Just, we're like in our early 20s. And there
Yeah.
was this one place we went to called the Sunset Cemetery in Manhattan, Kansas. And there was a mausoleum. They say like it was cut out. Just I'm sorry, but it's just you're sparking this memory. It was
Oh
like
no, it's fine though.
it's like you stepped down into it, and like, but still the ground was here, the ground level, before you walked into a mausoleum.
Yeah.
And they said when you go in there that you can't hear anything, but even though you're still at ground level. And I remember very well. It's actually a very true thing. I stepped into it, and you can't hear the outside world. It's
Wow.
very like everything just goes down, and it was a very warm feeling. There was a very feeling of warmness being there, and then found out that she was like whatever the M word or something like that,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's just I don't know why, but that memory just kind of went away until you were talking about them. But I forgot all about that
Yeah.
because I think that happens a lot. People have experiences and they kind of just brush over them, you know,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
yeah, it's an interesting thing.
I've had a lot of those too. Especially the more that I talk about the stuff on my show or talk about it like on other shows like yours here. Um, because I've had so many experiences because I've been doing it for so long that I completely forget about some. And then I'll be talking and it just pop in my head like, oh, I forgot about that craziness that happened to me,
Yeah.
that I just think is normal at this point. And other people are like, what the hell? Like at Carton Plantation, I had a ghost horse run through me one night
What?
where we had to sneak in, where we snuck onto the property. So next door to the property, they had turned part of the old battlefield into a golf course. So we would park at the clubhouse and we would jump the fence into the cemetery and then get on the property. Well, from the cemetery is a huge field, just a grass field, probably a good 2 football fields up to the actual house. And so we'd have to walk across that field. One night, about probably 4 or 5 in the morning, we'd been up and up at the house, and we'd experienced a few things. I don't remember exactly because this kind of overshadowed the entire night. And they hadn't mowed the field, so it's probably about knee deep. And we're walking back across there, and a couple of my friends, there were 5 or 6 of us. A couple of them were kind of ahead of us, about 30, 40 yards. And then I had a couple of my friends about 20 feet behind me. And I was walking by myself, and we hear a horse. We hear galloping to our left, and we hear a horse neigh, and like the whinny of a horse. And all of a sudden, I feel this cold draft, static electricity, every hair on my body standing up at the same time, go through me and then out the right side. And then the right side, a straight line of grass moved. It moved in a straight line, probably for 20 feet. You can see it raving and moving. And we were hearing the galloping it happened really fast, but we heard the galloping as it came up on me. It got louder, and then it went through me and kind of faded off as it faded off through the grass. And my friends come running up and they're like, what are you joking? Did a ghost horse just run through you? And I'm like, I don't know. We heard the galloping. I felt this happen. You saw what happened. Like that's all I can say, was that I had a ghost
That's
horse
kind of
with me.
hard to forget, dude. That happened to like me or some regular Tom, well, it's pretty funny. I'm regular Tom today. That would be the story of their life, but for you,
Yeah.
for whatever reason, why do you? I mean,
Yeah.
what is it about your nature? You seem to be like a well put together gentleman. You
Yeah.
seem to be meticulous. You're well spoken. You're well organized to be doing what you're doing. So
I don't know about that. I'm ADD, so
okay. Well, let's put a positive spin on it. Say you're organized, and like it's just it's what is it about this whole thing that just interests you? Have you been able to like question or ask yourself like the true self? Like, what is it about this strangeness in the world that just entices me? Is it like the spirit of thank you, Ben. Is it like the spirit of like adventure? Because people think like adventures in the old days would go up the
yeah.
Amazon or go out. Is it
Yeah.
something like that, or is there something to your nature that just that you enjoy about it?
I guess I've always kind of been nerdy, and kind of a geek. And so I guess in my nerdy geeky
No.
way, right. This is kind of my adrenaline. I'm an adrenaline junkie. Surprisingly, I'm an adrenaline junkie. I actually worked 15 years in emergency medicine on an ambulance, if that tells you how much adrenaline junkie I am.
Okay, dude.
Yeah. So I'm retired from the medical field after 20 years, but that's a different story. So it's a way to get the adrenaline going, and also it's the greatest mystery that can't be solved, because as much of an analytic person that I am, I can explain most things, right? I mean, when I was a kid, I would take things apart and put them back together because I wanted to know how they worked, right? And so you can do that to most, every physical thing. You can now, especially with Google and stuff, you can find out how anything works. And one of my favorite shows is How It's Made. I've probably seen every episode of that show 50 times. just because I'm intrigued at how things come to be, you know, out make out of nothing. And so I think that's what intrigues me, that it's the greatest mystery that we may never solve, but it's fun trying. And there's adrenaline component to it, because when you get that direct response, you know, it gets it flowing. And at this point, when I was younger, it kind of, some of the stuff scared me just because I wasn't as experienced and probably a little more naive than I am now. And now I'm just like, well, there are people too. And so now I get excited because I love the history so much. I think it's a amazing thing that I can talk to these people. Hopefully we're talking to these people who once lived, you know, and now they're just in a different form. So instead of having to read about them in history and being very two-dimensional people, like take the Night House, for example. Like, I'm reading about all this history, but they're very two-dimensional because you don't really, it's hard to get a sense of what their personalities were, right? Or what type of people they were. I mean, you can look at newspaper articles and say, okay, well, they were part of the debate club, so they, you know, like to argue or whatever, you know, things like that. Or they, you know, lawyers or whatever.
What a great like a little like example to pull out of your subconscious or wherever that came from.
Well, funny. It's one of the things I found about a couple of members of the Night House, of the Knight family, was one of them particularly was part of the debate club pretty much his entire life. And so I found all these newspaper articles, and you find a little bit about his personality because in these newspaper articles, they put what they were debating about and what each person's side, what they were taking, what side they were taking. Well, this particular member, Charlie, he's one of the ones that never got married and lived in the Night House his entire life. He was very liberal and progressive because a lot of the things they were debating about, he would take like women's suffrage. He was very much a proponent of women's suffrage and women getting to vote, and women have the same equal rights as. So you see a little bit of that, but the fact that you actually can get answers from these people in a way, like on a voice recorder or something like that, or them knocking, you can kind of get more of a sense of their personality. And also owning the Night House and owning the location and experiencing them all the time with little things they do all the time, you kind of get a better sense of who they were. You know, some of them were tricksters, you know, like to play jokes and have fun. And some of them were more serious. And, you know, some of them are like, you're the intruder in my house, get out, you know? So, but you get the personality with the paranormal. So, but like I said, it's also the greatest mystery, I think, in the world. Of everybody living who's ever lived has always wanted to know, somewhere in the back of your head, you want to know what happens when you die. No matter how much you're sure about your religion, or even if you're, you know, anti-religion, there's no way, nobody knows.
Right. Someone came back and said, you get like a free pizza and you get to moonwalk on the sun or something.
Right.
Like if they come back, like, well, yeah, you didn't really, you know, die.
Yeah.
It's like, people have, you know, NDEs and things like that. But yeah. So, what do you like? What do you think? What do you think is going on? Like, how long have you been doing it? First of all,
over 20 years.
Over 20 years. If you had to postulate, if you had to, you know, to make a hypothesis, what would you kind of point? Which general direction would you point towards? I guess I would say.
I think there is some place that we go. I think we change the form, whether it be another dimension, or that there is a higher power. But I think that we definitely change form and go somewhere else. I don't think we just cease to exist. And I think it depends on also, I think there's different explanations for hauntings. There's different explanations for Bigfoot and other things as well. But it all comes together and it's all tied together some way, some shape. My forte is ghost, like we've been talking about, but also studying Bigfoot with talking to guests on my show and doing research and reading books and things like that over the years. I know just enough to be dangerous with Bigfoot and dogmen and aliens and stuff, but it all seems that there's a thread that attaches all of it together. And a lot of times I like to, one of the most ingenious movies I think that doesn't get a lot of due, especially in the paranormal community, is the movie The Others.
That's a great movie.
Yeah.
I just watched it again. It is fantastic.
And how, you know, maybe that's the case with some of the hauntings, is that the ghosts think that we're haunting them and they're haunting us. And we're just in two different times, basically, you know. In that movie, you know, the spoilers, you know, she offed her kids and herself and they're a ghost. but they're still living in the time frame that they were living. And so I think, I think you have different explanations, because I think some hauntings can be time slips.
Okay.
And I think you have residual hauntings, which is kind of a recording that plays over and over, and then you have intelligent,
which would be maybe the time slip, or
no. I think the time slip. I think if you look, one of the famous stories of a time slip was at the Conjuring house. Whenever the Perrins lived there, I had Andrea Perrin on my show, and she was one of the daughters, and she lived there for 10 years until she went to college. But her and her mom,
wow.
She claims that her and her mom were in the in like the living room area, and then there's I guess a dining room area that's in front of a fireplace, and her mom both saw this materialize, where they saw this family sitting at this table in front of the fireplace, eating dinner. And she said that the two men that were sitting at the table, was probably like a father and son, turned and looked at them and smiled, like they acknowledged Andrea and her mom. But she postulates that maybe they thought they were the ghost, that Andrea and her mom were the ghost, and they're just seeing like this time slip where they're actually seeing back in time in the house for whatever reason. But they said that people seem to be just as solid as us, and it was just like they just materialized, and then they just kind of faded back away. But they acknowledged Andrea and her mom, and there's lots of stories like that.
Yeah, that's I find time slips, and like where the two were postulating, of course, these two time frames as well as reality is kind of like mesh for a second and then go away. It's kind of like it's fluid, or or there's some type of bridge that happens, or however you want to put that in your mind to make it feasible to understand. Did you say a couple minutes ago that you actually did Sasquatch or Bigfoot investigations?
I've never done an investigation. I've just done lots of research with books and things. I've always been fascinated by Bigfoot, because we have lots of sightings here in Tennessee.
Yes.
With Bigfoot. Even in my area, Middle Tennessee, there's been sightings around here that the BFRO have investigated and recorded. And I think the last sighting was 2014 in Middle Tennessee of a very credible witness. And the BFRO, from what I understand, they think that Bigfoot is mainly in the mountains. And the reason we don't have more sightings in Middle Tennessee, they think that when we do have sightings in Middle Tennessee, it's because they're traveling to mate. So, a male is going to a different territory, to be with different females or whatever. And that's when they kind of cross, the humans.
Yeah,
paths.
maybe they're walking up into the LBL or something.
Yeah.
And the LBL to the east, from the Smoky Mountains all over and then back. Makes sense.
And Middle Tennessee is the most built up area of Tennessee anyway. I mean, we still have lots of rural open land, and it's very green. I mean, even Nashville is very green. If you've ever been in Nashville, there's trees everywhere. I mean, it's just very green, but it's still the more built up area. So when they cross the path here, they get seen sometimes. But Land Between the Lakes, like you're saying, they have sightings out there.
It's a wild place.
Yeah, it's a very weird place.
It's a weird place, man. Oh, you gotta, if you like paranormal investigating and you're really into it and you want to go down, there's a guy I'm in contact with. It's called the Meadow Project. Have you heard of it?
Yeah.
I just interviewed his name is Trey Williams, Trey something or other. It's just he's always looking for people to come down and actually. Thank you so much, Shade Viking, for your support. Appreciate it, buddy. He's always looking for somebody to go down there. That I don't know where it is, because you have to sign an NDE to even go there.
Yeah.
It was 2 hours of me just going. I didn't even get. I had maybe. To be honest, maybe 5 to 6 questions in 2 hours, because he just kind of went through everything that's going on there. And I don't know, man. He's just looking like he would be a guy that would be like the way you are and the way he is. You would fit very well together, and it would be something. It's something kind of a cool collaboration that you can go down there and just kind of like look at what's going on. I've never heard of such things. It's coming up, guys. It's coming up, guys. You'll see it drop.
You need to have Shane Corson on. He's part of the Olympic Project, which is kind of like the same thing that Trey's doing, but over on the Corson. Over on the Pacific Northwest, and they are very well funded. They have umpteen cameras in the area that they like, this 40 square miles that they study. They have a cabin there that they stay when they go out there to research and all this other stuff. But Shane Corson he's just like that too. He's the Bigfoot version of me, basically, like you're saying. Like he's very analytical. He's very matter of fact, scientific based. You know what I'm saying? And talks he's very well spoken about Bigfoot and their research with the Olympic Project. And I had him on my show, and he's a great guy, great guest. But yeah, Shane Corson.
I'm going to write him. I'm going to write him. See if I can get a hold of him. That would be an interesting conversation. But this dude was like that, but like he's also former military, like intelligence officer, and he's like, yeah, we made an affidavit and we wrote everything down. Everything's on the radio, 2x2s. Mission must go on. And I was just sitting there like, wow, it was very interesting. It's just there's so much going on. Do you think that since you've been doing this for 20 years, so 2005-ish, 4-ish, 5-ish, has the overall activity picked up in the world, or is it that we're just more aware of it? Hello, Kimber.
I think a little bit of both. I think with it being more popular in pop culture, I think more people are paying attention. And I think especially with COVID, because people were forced to be at home and to actually sit down and get to know their home better. Yeah. I think you had a lot more people have paranormal stuff happen in their houses and report it. And I think that made a lot more people believe in it as well. But I think there's also been a shift to where for years I've heard people saying the veil's thinning or whatever, whether you believe in that or not. But I have noticed an uptick in paranormal activity. And also, I think for me, the longer you do it, the more it's I forget where the quote's from, but when you look into the abyss looks into you.
Yes.
And the same thing with the paranormal. I think the more you get into it, the more they're attracted to you and the more evidence that you'll get, especially when you come from a place of respect and you go in the right way, with that approach. And I think for the most part, they know your intentions when you come into an investigative place. I think they already know what you're all about.
Kind of like Bigfoot. Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Because Bigfoot knows for some reason if you have a camera, if you have a phone, if you have a sidearm, or whatever it is seems to be the same. It's a complete and utter mystery that some reason is shunned on by mainstream science because it can't be quantified in a way in which you can kind of measure it.
Right.
Which is why we call it the paranormal. All right, man. So let's go to a couple quick questions about the book. We're trying to push this out there for you.
Yeah.
How long? I know. Okay, so you've been doing it for 20 years. So basically, it took you 20 years to write it. Is this your first book?
Yeah, this is my first book. When I started, it actually took me almost 2 years from when I actually began to write it, because it was I'm a very creative person, but it was the hardest creative thing I've ever done. And we were kind of talking before the show. The biggest thing was the formatting of how am I going to put this in a cohesive way that makes sense so that it flows for people, Mm-hmm. And so once I had the formatting, the research and stuff was easy because the research is reading books, talking to investigators, talking to normal people, witnesses, looking up newspaper articles, like, using all the different, using all different methods, Google, websites, things like that. So then the easy part is collating all of that into a cohesive story. I'm fine with that. But yeah, it was just getting the formatting right so that it flows for people and it works that way. But yeah, putting it all together wasn't very hard. Like I said, once I had all the research, but yeah, it was a difficult thing to begin with to be a brand new author. But now I'm itching to do the next one because I had a lot of fun, especially with the research, because I'm a huge history buff, and so learning all that stuff is pretty cool. And then also I get to come on and talk on shows like yours a lot about ghost stories and my own stories, and so that's always fun. So
yeah, it's always a lot of fun. It's always fun to get to speak to people like or gentlemen, people, everybody like yourself, because I love the candor in which you do it, because I'm a scaredy cat. I've had encounters. There's things that it's gotten a little better for me. Like there's things that'll happen now Like if I hear knocking on the door, that's 3 knocks, I go, "You're not welcome." Just
Yeah.
things I just know, you know what I mean, or intuitive.
Yeah.
Put out a, there's something weird. I see a little shadow in the corner, which happens from time to time. I just kind of, I don't ignore it, but I just go, "I see you. You're not welcome here," and then it goes
Yeah.
away for a while. It's just when you speak to people who, like, that's happening for me too. Like, not just being a person who investigates it, but I investigate it through you. I'm just a medium to help put it out that people enjoy
Yeah.
what we're
Yeah.
doing. And I always enjoy helping people who enjoy doing what they're doing. It could be anybody. I mean, I had a guy on recently who, it was an idea I had that I have to scrap because he's better than me at it. He paints oil paintings like I do, but he puts Bigfoot in the paintings. And you have
Yeah.
to search for them in the painting, so people go, "Oh," and then they buy it. So
Yeah.
you just interesting stuff, man. Thank you. One more time, dude. Before we get you up out of here, let's go ahead and promote everything. Of course, let's promote the book again. That way we can get all the links will be down below here, guys.
Yeah, I got a copy right here. Small Town Haunts and Legends of Tennessee. And it is on Amazon right now on Kindle Unlimited for free, or you can buy the Kindle version, also on hardback and paperback. And yeah, the book, it's doing really well on Amazon. When it first came out, I was actually topping the charts, so that was kind of cool.
No kidding. Well, congratulations to you, man. That's awesome.
It was in the top 10 in a couple categories there for a minute, so that's pretty awesome.
Yeah,
it's still not doing bad. But
yeah, as soon as I seen it, you posted it. It popped up on my feed in Facebook. I grabbed it and threw it on the page, and I was like, "Go over. This is Eric's shit. Go check it out, guys." And it was. You were like, "Thanks." I was like, "No problem, dude." That's cool. That hopefully I had something to do. At least a little bit. That maybe a sale. That'd be cool.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I've actually sold because I ordered a bunch of author copies, and I've actually sold about probably 40 copies myself. Kidding. Yeah, offline. So yeah, it's people seem to be. I'm getting really good reviews, and people seem to be enjoying it. So I'm itching to do the next one. And I think I'm going to try to have the Kentucky book out by October. So I'm going to kind of push it to get it done, and it'll be kind of the same formatting. Like I said, with the state divided up and go across and do it that way, kind of like a reference book. And then also the Unseen Paranormal podcast, which if anybody out there has not listened to. Kind of the same format like your show here. I host the show, and then I have different guests on to talk about everything from Bigfoot to dogmen to portals to time slips to ghosts to haunted houses. So authors, researchers, investigators, all kind of different stuff.
If you ever need a guest, hook a brother up. Just go ahead and contact me, Eric. I have poltergeist. I have a couple things that we could talk about for sure.
Yeah. I'm fixing to kick the show back. Yeah. All right. No, I'd love to have you on. I'm fixing to kick the show back up. Kind of been on hiatus for a few months because I wasn't sure if I was going to bring the show back after 160 something episodes. It's just getting harder to find guests and stuff, but we're changing the format a little bit. I'm still going to interview guests, but the show's going to come out every other week instead of every week. And we're going to do a component with actually we announced it last night. Sin and Austin Lawrence are going to be my co-host for a lot of the shows,
dude.
And we're going to talk about ghost stories.
Yeah, these are my buddies, man. Oh, that's awesome. That's a good idea.
But the show will debut for season 5, March 26th, and it'll be out every other Wednesday. There'll be an episode out. So, but that's the Unseen Paranormal podcast. And like I said, for anybody who's never listened to it, there's 160 something episodes up now. So you got plenty of catching up to do. And then I also have the Night House in Hopkinsville, Kentucky. So if anybody wants to come and travel and hang out with us and be awesome. I love giving the tours. It's a lot of fun teaching people. And we have a few events coming up at the Night House. April 12th, we have a spring public ghost hunt where me and Sin's going to be my guest investigator.
Okay.
Tickets are $25 a person, and you get to investigate with me and Sin, the Night House. And that day, we're doing an afternoon with authors at the Night House, with Sin being one of the authors. She's going to give a presentation on her book, Signs from Beyond. And she's going to have books on hand to sell and to sign for people. We're also going to have my buddy Pat Fitzhugh, who is pretty much the expert on the Bell Witch legend and hauntings. And he's written 4 books and working on his 5th book about the Bell Witch legend and the hauntings. And he's going to be there to do a presentation and to sign books. And that'll be from noon to 3. And the first hour, I'm going to give a historical tour around the house for everybody. and then the next 2 hours. So for $40, tickets are $15 for that. So you can come to Hopkinsville, spend the whole day, spend $40, and have entertainment from noon until 11 o'clock at night.
Sounds incredible, dude. So guys, go out there and check that out. Go to the places that you need to, and sign up for that. That sounds like a very interesting. Sin is a wonderful person, a great author. Austin, you said you're gonna have Austin and Sin on. Talk about great people to bounce ideas off of and flesh things out. That's going to be I think that was a very good choice. And, I'm looking forward to it.
I am fortunate that they are two of my best friends. So
they were saying the same things. They're saying the same exact things. So that's great that you guys can go and do that together. All right, man. That was amazing. Thank you so much for coming on the show, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, buddy. Catch you later.
Yeah, everybody have a good night. Thank you.
Bye. Okay, that was Eric Freeman Sims. His new book, Tennessee. Oh, I can't remember the names. There's so many names. Tennessee Legends and Short Stories. Small Town. There we go. Thank you. Small Town Haunts, Legends of Tennessee. Eric's new book. Go over, pick it up, check it out, read it. When you're on the John. Tom sounds amazing tonight. Great show. Thank you. I've been working on my computer. I had too much of my what do they call that, recycling bin. I still got to go through and clean out some old programs. Maybe that helped me get a little faster. So I want to thank Eric so much one more time for coming on again. If you guys keep coming back to the show, please do me a favor, like and subscribe to the channel. It helps me out so very much. Hit the bell notification. Go out and check out my catalog. I'm on 60 in. Almost 60 in when it comes to regular programs that come out every Tuesday at 3:30 Central Time, and every Friday, just like today, you get a live with very interesting guests. We're going to be having MK Davis come back on. We're going to have Bigfoot Michigan Rob's going to come on. We're going to have a lot coming up. This show never stops. It won't stop. Can't stop. It's been incredible. It's been a lot of fun. Right up after this, please do me a favor, go over and check out Magical Journey. His live is coming up in approximately a half hour, so don't leave YouTube. Go ahead and cook your rice-a-roni and get your pork chops in the oven, and go ahead and check out my Magical Journey show. I love you all. Remember, we are the eye, and we are aware.